Hey everyone, welcome to episode 55 of the Miami Tech Pod. We are here in City Hall, in Miami City Hall, with the man of the hour, Mayor Francis Suarez, but the man who makes the trains run on time, the man who inspires the entire Miami Tech ecosystem to really create magic for people that are living here. Erick, Gavin, the executive director of Venture Miami. Welcome to the Miami Tech Pod, man.
Thank you, man. That was a really wonderful introduction. The man of the hour, I'll take it because the mayor's currently not here. So I have to take in any little light of shine I can
You're
get,
not like the designated survivor or anything, right?
I am not the designated survivor at this moment, but, I step up when need be.
Awesome.
Cesar sometimes moonlights as a hype man. So I'm still waiting for his recording of him hyping me up, but
got you.
In all due time.
Do you have to pay him for that?
Yeah.
That's what needs to happen?
It's a TaskRabbit thing.
You'll get an invoice.
Yeah.
But no, we won't charge the taxpayers though. That's
Yeah.
You can't do that.
Can't do that.
But
they're gonna come down on me pretty hard.
Erick, man, why don't you tell the listeners, let's start, at the top. What is Venture Miami?
Got you. So Venture Miami is a office out of the city of Miami, which started as an initiative last year from Mayor Francis Suarez. So it's turned that initiative, which was a hodgepodge of academics, VCs, founders that came together part-time all through last year, trying to push forward and grow the tech innovation ecosystem. The mayor said that really worked, and then decided to bring me on full time with Saif, Mike Sarosky's Saif Ashuf, Mike Sarosky's blessing.
Legends.
Legends in the game, even now. So came on board at the beginning of this year to start pushing things forward and kind of bring some strategy and vision to what needs to start happening. So when we talk about growing the tech and innovation ecosystem, what do we actually mean? So I'm pretty sure we're going to dive into that a little bit today.
So how would you kind of bucket what you guys do? Is like talent one thing, fundraising, and then I think you guys do a lot with if someone's looking to relocate their company, you help them too. So for broadly speaking, what are the different buckets? And then can you drill in more into the folks that are looking to relocate here from a company perspective, how you help them?
Yeah. So let's back up. Venture Miami has kind of 4 buckets that we could put things into: a concierge service, technology more generally, education, and talent. For our concierge service, that is purely which is led by Kevin Ruiz and Nikki Demko. They go about taking in all the inbound that is either from the mayor's office and or just generally from different places that are around the nation, actually internationally now as well. Because with the unfortunate situation that's happening now, we are getting a lot of conversations with Ukraine as well about people trying to relocate here and move here. So what they'll do is they'll call us. They'll say, hey, we want to move there. And we're like, okay, because we're the city, obviously we can't say, go be exactly here in the city. But we will say, how big of a space are you looking for? Are you moving your family down here? Do your kids need a place to actually go to school? And so we'll give lists and we'll start to narrow things down based upon people's needs. So they'll go from, okay, that space is nice, but it's not big enough for the team that you're bringing down here. You're bringing 50 people down here. It's not big enough. Oh, you're bringing your family down here and you like kind of more quiet places. Don't go to Wynwood. That's not going to be a place that you want to live. You can go there to have fun and have a nice time, but you don't want to live over there. Coconut Grove might be too expensive for you, depending on how much you're spending. Oh, you're $1 billion company? Maybe it's not too expensive for you. Maybe you'll be okay. So we try to narrow down based upon people's tastes and likes, and we give them a good smorgasbord of options so they can make a decision at the end of the day about what they want to do best. And then we try to make those connections, firm connections for them to say, please go to this party next in order to kind of follow through and sign your lease and do the like. We can't do that, but we can say these are the parties you need to go to next to start executing on the list that we just kind of provided for you. So that's concierge and the like. What we will be doing moving forward is starting to do outbound, and we have been testing that a little bit to start figuring out there's our key areas that we would like to expand in Miami more specifically. We've been doubling down. We have the highest investment in blockchain. but we need to double down in other areas as well, so we're not just kind of putting all our eggs in one basket, depending upon what happens in the next couple coming years. I don't necessarily know.
That's
what's gonna
Erick's
happen.
way of saying he's afraid of crypto winter too.
I'm not scared of crypto winters. I hodl no matter what. I'm never
Diamond
gonna
hands,
die.
diamond hands.
But at the same time, we still need to expand. If we're talking about an entire city, an entire economy, we have to diversify just a bit in order to make sure that we're thinking about things more holistically, especially since every single industry can't just fall underneath Web3, right? So, when we're talking about things like we have a great health system, why aren't there more health startups that exist down here? We have health and biotech startups that are down here. We have the water. Why aren't there more clean tech and environmental tech companies that exist down here, or funds to sustain both of them more strongly, right? So we want to start thinking a little bit more broadly in terms of the types of industries that are doing really, really well down here. Not to take away from Web3. I want all that to the moon. I really want that. But we still need to make sure that we're covering our bases when we're talking about these different industries as well. That's concierge. Then there's tech, which, and I'm not even going to lie to you guys, most of my time with tech specifically when it comes to the city has been with MiamiCoin, which I know we'll talk about at some point in time later.
Yeah, no. Why don't we just jump into it? Yeah.
Let me finish this, and then we'll jump into it. I promise. Which has been MiamiCoin, but MiamiCoin actually should be thought underneath more smart city stuff, because smart cities consist of trying to better serve our citizens. And MiamiCoin, at the end of the day, having a social benefit, should get to a point where it's exclusively doing that. Instead of having these conversations about what price is it at, I'm not having that conversation. We should be having conversations about what social benefit and civic duty is going to be providing for citizens in its usage. So that's tech. Then moving to education. This education right now is education broadly with technology. We're starting with things that have to do with Web3 because it's sexy right now and people like that. So that's fine. But moving more broadly into educating our citizens into learning and kind of exposure education so that they know about what tech is, how they can get into tech, and then moving into tech more easily for non-technical people. As well as my hope is politicians as well, so that we can start actually doing legislation around strengthening our environment around tech. I would love if, and this is a very side notish thing, but I would love if DAOs were recognized as an organization in Florida, right? But I know that's a very, very far away, kind of like down the road type of comment. But that's where we kind of want to head.
That's only Wyoming, right?
It's only Wyoming right now. And I had a conversation with the City DAO guys that were pushing that. I would love if that could be a conversation that happens in Florida, right? I would love if Bitcoin was recognized as a currency in Florida, right? But those are innovative things that I think would allow us to try more things, both as a city and as entrepreneurs in the city. But we'll push those along and keep having conversations about them. And then lastly, talent, which everybody I think is on the same board with talent, that we need to make sure that we're both properly preparing our talent that is local here. And then if we're going to try to close the gap, and this is, I know I see people's argument on both sides, bring talent in, but not make talent that's coming in completely the focus over talent that exists currently here. Because we've always had conversations about there's a brain drain in Miami. People graduate here and they just leave to New York and they go to LA. Like, that has been a constant. So obviously, if we could just put a cap on that, that won't solve all the problems, but it will start to solve a large one that exists as the gap currently exists. But moving past that point, how do we start to help people who are not going through the traditional channels to start moving into some of these tech jobs that we know doesn't require necessarily a 4 degree as well to do some of those things. All of those 4 things, which are very, very big and very, very deep, are not all on Venture Miami to do, but it's on Venture Miami to create strong partnerships in order to enable them more strongly. I hope that's a good overview. Now, about MiamiCoin specifically, right? What is the question to that effect? Like, what is it?
Let's start there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So MiamiCoin was a initiative started by a partnership with City Coins. City Coins is a decentralized application, and it's also a company that is living on top of Stacks, which is uses a consensus mechanism through Bitcoin. So long story short, Stacks is just built on top of Bitcoin, and it's using Stacks in order to, let's say,
so Stacks, would it be considered an L2 on Bitcoin?
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah. I just didn't want to start using layer 2 and layer. I'm trying to
Right,
give
but, like,
easy like it is a layer 2.
Right,
Yes, it is.
But I
It
think
is.
in an audio format, and since most of our guests or our listeners are listening and not watching this on YouTube,
Yeah.
like most of them, I think are also enough into the lingo that they
Oh,
would
okay.
understand. You know, like
Okay. I just
You can
want to
dumb
make
it down
sure.
for me any day.
this lady's an NFT degen. All right,
I know,
So,
right?
I don't know if she's talking about like that she doesn't understand. This
Maria
is
was
a
literally an
act.
NFT for Halloween.
Like, this is true.
So yes, Stacks is a layer 2 on
Yeah.
top, and all it's attempting to do.
But didn't the City Coin sort of like jump the gun and like launch this before the city had any real buy-in into this? Like, wasn't that the case?
So I'm not sure necessarily if they jumped the gun. I do know that their model is to work with the community first,
Mhm.
and their model is not supposed to require the city to buy in before they start operating and opening up a mining operation for a certain city, right? I can't tell you because I wasn't here at the time when they started the engagement, but what I can tell you is that once the engagement did start, the dynamic is set like this. The mining operation happens. The city gets the burn rate, which is the 30% off of all the mining that actually does the mining rewards that happens. And those constitute stacks, which goes into a wallet. But the city does not hold that wallet. The person who holds that wallet is City Coins. And so there's about a little over 9 million stacks in there right now. And from that, we convert those stacks into fiat, and those are given to gift to the city.
Mhm.
Once that's given to a gift to the city, because it is a normal gift, it goes to the general fund.
Mhm.
And if it goes to the general fund, it has to then be voted upon by the commission. Recently, we got a disbursement of 5.25, which was then put up to the commission, to which they were going to make the vote about whether or not it was going to be used for rental assistance, which they did use it for rental assistance, but it went into a rental assistance program that already exists. So they kind of refilled the pot on that in that regard.
You know, I think it's fascinating, right? I think it's like at the end of the day, cities have an entire list of problems they want to solve, and it's usually a money problem, right? Because you know the city commission will have to prioritize what it wants to allocate money to, and you know obviously the mayor weighs in and sets a direction of what priorities. But you know it's really interesting because like now we have this case where like at scale you can have an entirely new revenue source that financial planners at the city really didn't anticipate, right?
Correct.
But there's also this interesting kind of like commentary that I've heard around it where it's like, okay, well, is this sustainable, right? Like, are we gonna always be getting $5 million checks every, you know, so often?
Yeah.
And like, how much should we be banking on that type of, you know, inflow into the city while everyone's excited about crypto pre-winter, you know, 2 or whatever, like for programs that aren't necessarily built for like a one-time infusion of money, right? Like
Correct.
could be, you know, really in order for them to be successful need to be like constantly funding in recurrent revenue of the city. Like is there like a hidden downside that we're not being honest about in that?
I wouldn't say it's a downside, but you have already articulated the problem, right? In its current format, it is not sustainable. I want everybody to be extremely clear on that. It is not sustainable in its current format because it's a over-reliance on miners to supply the treasury, the wallet
Right.
that exists for that, right? So what has to happen is that there has to be a new mechanism in order to reinvest back into it. And then it will become a flywheel effect eventually in which it can sustain itself. But we're not there yet, right? So even if like right now I'm saying all this stuff because you can see it on the block. That's a great thing about blockchain. You can see all this stuff. None of it's hidden. About 90 something percent of it is locked right now, which means locked just simply means that it is accruing Bitcoin because it's being stacked, which there should be about $300,000 that have been stacked so far, which is a nice interest on top of that principal.
Right.
But in order for it to continue to go that way and to be something that can be pulled out for large $1 million disbursements, there would need to be a lot larger of a principal, obviously, for that to start happening. Right now, if it's only in 9 million stacks, and I think that started in August. So that means so only across about 6-ish months were they able to accrue about $300,000. That's not enough to do $1 million disbursements on a regular basis, right?
Sure.
This $5 million that they just did is a one-time deal, and I would suggest that they never pull out that amount of money again.
Got it. Yeah. So that's a super interesting, like, nuanced point, though, that because on its surface it looks great. Like, you can do a lot of good stuff with $5 million, right?
Yeah.
But you know, how do you build these sustainable programs, like you just said, that kind of reinvest, that have a mechanism to continue generating revenue to reinvest into programs long term, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I feel like that could be a neat thing to, you know, wrap some of the brightest minds around, you know, like crypto and tech and government planning around, like, how do we make this sustainable? It's something, you know, I'm not giving you homework here, Erick,
You're not giving me homework that I haven't already given myself.
Yeah, because
right?
like that could be a fascinating, you know, use of Venture Miami, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do we turn this into something sustainable where we can like fund real programs, do real good with something that was essentially an experiment, like, on the front end. You know?
Yeah, I can tell you where I'm at with it right now, and this is a draft. Is that disbursements don't happen any more frequent than a quarter, right? And those disbursements definitely are not $5 million a piece. Are split percentage wise based off of prescribed needs. So maybe let's say, and these are all fake percentages because I haven't actually done this. Is back of the hand napkin math. Let's say 30% of it goes to the general fund, just like it did this last time, depending on how much it is. But then another 30% is going to go into investment into innovation and technology reinvestment of some sort. So that simply means that any type of initiatives that help to create new sources of revenue to put towards that treasury, and or technology that's going to create another new source or augment the source in and of itself, money will go towards efforts that help out specifically with that. Another small portion will be for fees, just in the event that something comes up and we're just not accounting for it. And then another portion goes directly back into it as just a straight up reinvestment back into the fund, right? So in that way, you start creating a model in which every single time a disbursement happens, you're automatically covering the issue of, oh, we're not just putting everything into the general fund and then they spend the money on something that has nothing to do with how we can sustain this over a long period of time. I think that the commission should continue to get some funds, right? That's the whole point of the entire thing, right? Well, that's another question. What is the whole point of the entire thing? Is it to give money directly to citizens, like what has been described in the form of a dividend, or is it to give money to the city to make decisions about how the citizens should be benefited from it? It's a nice policy question to ask, right? Which I do not have the direct answer to. I'm a little bit biased as to always give direct benefits to citizens and let them make the decision about what they feel is necessary to do. But I also know why political systems are in place, right? That they have their benefits towards helping people make decisions about the whole. So there has to be some balance between that when we're talking about them more firmly. But I will say, I have just started a conversation with the community. Brian was there virtually, to start having a more broader conversation about what both MiamiCoin needs to look like and what kind of cryptocurrency Web3 technology needs to look like in order to benefit the community more broadly. So those conversations are happening, but we need to, I would like to put the gas pedal on it just a little bit more.
But you know, it's an interesting thing if we circle way back to the beginning when you were talking about, you know, how do you make this sustainable?
Yeah.
Right. And how do you build a flywheel out of this? Right.
Yeah.
Because the reality is that a city coin or MiamiCoin or whatever you want to call it, or whatever the next permutation of this is effectively like a modern version of like a government bond. But in this case, the bond is being used as the gas to power the infrastructure of the government, right? Because you could use the blockchain of the stacks or whatever it is as the data set, right? And use all those technologies to then sort of further increase the demand for this token or whatever it is, right? And so like the economics are super fascinating. It's interesting. You guys are in an interesting spot because you guys get to sort of lay the groundwork for this, because there's no other city that's more progressive on this front than Miami right now. In adopting these things and also pioneering, you know, what could be done, right? And that's one thing I'm very jealous of, the fact that you guys get sort of this leeway to like experiment with, you know, a city that is supportive of this, you know.
But you don't need to be jealous, man. That's why I'm bringing you in. I want more people to be a participant in it, because it is such a hairy problem, right? Like there are a lot of nuances to it that I think, like, I have literally never dealt with government bonds before, right? That's a completely new concept to me. I understand bonds very easily, but I understand DeFi better than I understand like government bonds.
I mean, think about
right?
this: if the future of like city or government is in some form of DeFi, like that's some crazy shit.
That's crazy.
Let me suggest this idea. All right, you tell me if this has legs or not.
Shoot.
The
Erick.
Cesar Fernandez Bridge.
This is not me lobbying government. This is just this is a whiteboard session. We're doing it live.
Okay. Shoot.
What if you guys being the city, Venture Miami, actually created a public venture fund where the revenue and dividend goes into an actual fund, and you're investing in Miami startups that have, let's call it 75% of their employees based in the city of Miami, right? It's risk, but it's not money from taxpayers per se, right? It's outside money that's generated from, you know, this token. And the upside could be what venture returns are, and the downside is limited because taxpayers aren't burning money through an initiative like that.
I have had that thought.
Do it.
The only reason the think of the infrastructure of Miami. Let's make a comparison, right? Who also has a coin out right now, New York, right? I've been looking at them very, very closely because they have some, and to be completely transparent, there's some things infrastructure wise that they have set up that makes it 10 times easier to do what you just described than it is for Miami to do what's just described.
Like this is not a new concept of government,
it's
right?
not
like
a new
pension
concept
funds,
sovereign
not.
wealth funds.
Yeah, well
It's
no, but
not.
like even the state of Florida's pension funds, it's not like that is invested in like a bunch of like really safe index funds. Like
It's
hedge
not.
funds manage pension funds.
The state of Florida
And-
does have a fund for late stage
Right,
venture
right.
investment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a
But
few.
you're also still talking about the state,
Yeah,
right? You're not talking about the city.
yeah. So
And so-
exactly, like back to the city.
Back to the city, right? I haven't seen, and please anybody correct me if I'm wrong, I haven't seen any city take on that aggressive of approach with a fund of that nature before, right? But I can see where Miami could do it if we were to create some type of entity that sat adjacent to the city as opposed to the city actually holding the fund. Because when that starts to happen in that format, it becomes a little bit murky as to, you know, what needs to happen, one, to execute it, and two, how those things get dispersed and or utilized as we kind of move forward in a further conversation about, oh, it just goes back into the fund. It's like, should it Should it go back
Yeah,
into the
the
fund,
city should-
or should the commission make the decision about it going into something that happens directly for the citizens all over again, right?
I
So
think
it's
an
an open
interesting
conversation.
An interesting analog here is really like Harvard endowment, right, or
Exactly.
Yale endowment,
Right.
right? You know, a percentage of that goes back towards the general operating fund.
Yeah.
But the vast majority of Harvard's endowment goes back to Harvard's endowment to like grow that shit and
Right.
like hit 50 billion as soon as they can.
That's
right?
true.
So
Yeah, like let's say, the fund charges carry,
Mhm.
and then that could be allocated by the commission, but the rest on the upside is actually just reinvested into the fund.
yeah, and that carry could go to fund the Venture Miami's operations long term. You know?
Yeah, no. These
Give Erick a raise.
No, these are really good points, right? I do wonder if traditional, and this is an open question. I do wonder if traditional government is comfortable with the idea of so much financial influence being aside from the traditional methods that they have to go through for the fund that they already do have, right? So you speak it like, if we were to open a fund like that and then say that these are our goals, I could very much see it not completely outpacing, but almost being on par with what the general fund is currently now. I do not see that being completely out of bounds, especially city of Miami's, not the county. The county is way too big, right? But the city, I could very much see it being on par with that. That probably wouldn't necessarily sit well in terms of, we're going to use all this money that's exactly the same amount as yours on just this tech stuff. That seems very, very driven, and it probably runs afoul of some conflicts of interest.
Well,
Which is why-
you gotta like just when you structure this fund, this like mystical fund that we're creating here.
Yeah.
You got to do a prohibition on lobbying the fund allocators.
Yeah.
like there's
Yeah.
no way.
There's no way.
Like, people like me
There's
will ruin
no
it.
way.
For sure, yeah.
People like
So-
Cesar ruin everything.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah.
Mainly
so
Cesar.
so let's say this for the sake of this part of the conversation. Given any lack of limitations on
This is his law school.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Seeping
It's coming
through.
out. It's coming out. Any lack of limitations on legalities and or politics or infrastructure problems of creating it, I will 100% do that.
But can you imagine, like, this is my last soapbox moment on this,
Yeah.
right? Because we got to wrap here. But can you imagine where you have a fund structure, like let's say Melissa's the GP and there's an investment board and all of that, and there's like this entire fund that's funded by revenue coming from CityCoin, right, or MiamiCoin, and the startups that they're funding are actually startups where they're private companies solving some type of public problem. Isn't that just like a much better way of like allocating capital than through government?
Say that one more time.
So what he's saying is this MiamiCoin fund, the Cesar Fernandez fund for Miami or whatever we're
No,
calling it,
absolutely not. Yeah.
would be funding companies that are doing things like sewage innovation or
Smart city stuff
like
too.
smart cities,
look,
but also
So
like
like urban.us. Remember
Yeah.
Stonely and
Leak is another one, where like they have smart sensors on pipes that'll tell you if they're going to burst before they actually do, so that we don't have to spend so much money repairing pipes. Like
Yeah.
things like that, where it's an actual public good, a bunch of clean tech and sustainability companies. There's a bunch of water companies, like where you're not just randomly funding some SaaS company that like has no public benefit, but you're
Correct.
funding companies solving public problems.
and we're obviously not putting you on the spot on all this, right? We're not expecting like policy decisions and suggestions because that's not your job.
Of course.
But like, to be sort of devil's advocate here, like there is a high risk of letting everybody with a startup idea experiment with the city of Miami and use it as its petri dish. Like suddenly, what if leak poisoned everybody in Miami? No, we're not saying they are.
Yeah,
Damn.
of course.
But like, so like that's the balance, because like the city and the county both want to be like a place where people can come and innovate and help fix these problems, because there's a lot of problems that we've got in our community that are much bigger than what we're talking about in just tech and like infrastructure, transportation, education, countless things.
Right, but like the reality is that companies today, right, get millions of dollars from government through procurement process with questionable accountability on that, you know, ROI to solve public problems. It's not like the government is like creating departments to solve every problem, right? Like most of it is contracted out through procurement.
Yeah.
So like, why not just say like, we're gonna do it a different way, and we're gonna actually not just give a company money to solve a problem, but be on the cap table.
Have an
once
upside.
it solves that problem, on the back end, you just generated a ton more money that could be reinvested into this flywheel of solving problems.
To be clear, I'm for this idea. I'm not against
and
it.
And that's the thing.
No, Brian's coming at me like, oh, this is gonna.
Because I'm with Brian.
I mean, look, I also wear a accounting hat now too. So.
because the thing about it is I think what you just said makes perfect sense. The problem that we keep running up against is that the onus that the city takes by being on that cap table are. I have had conversations where we've been unable to do and I can't disclose all that, but we've been unable to do very, very simple things just because there has been mischaracterizations of how much the city was involved in something.
Have you considered not telling the city attorney's office about it?
Have you considered how much trouble I would get if I don't tell the city attorney's office when
Eric
I have
doesn't
full
want to get
knowledge?
disbarred.
Because I mean, the other part of it is like, do you have full knowledge of what you're doing? I'm like, I do. I can't say that I don't, right?
Look, but it's a fair point, which is like cities have to manage risk and liability too, right? It's an organization,
and sometimes they do it. They overstep doing that, right? Yeah. But so then the real I think interesting opportunity for us is there a way to create different types of structures within and without the city that can do what you're describing? Because I only brought up New York earlier to say that New York has like 2 not-for-profit entities that exist around it that are not directly inside of the city that they can take in crypto whenever they want.
Right.
So it completely avoids the problem that I'm currently having right now, which is, I have to wait for them to convert it into fiat and then we get it. And I can't do anything interesting with it if we ever wanted to do anything interesting with crypto. Or I couldn't ask someone to guide through a process of doing something interesting with crypto if there was a safe DeFi thing that we wanted to do, right? There is no possibility to do that because the city can't in any way interface with that because we don't have any mechanism or organization that operates in our capacity to do so.
Thanks for joining the Miami Tech Pod, man.
No, thank you for having me on, man. It's been amazing.
Any last plugs before we wrap here?
All right, I'm gonna say once again, hiring fair. You need to do that. April 14th. Yes. Workshops. We'll be announcing those next week. You should be going to those workshops. If you don't feel prepared for the hiring fair, definitely 100% do that. I will also, if you are all interested in doing anything with MiamiCoin in the community, I'll be announcing some community workshops that will be happening this month in March. At least 1, but probably more likely than not 2, so that we can get some more input because we want community's involvement in it. And I'm planning on doing something in May around that. So I'm looking forward to kind of pushing that out as well. So thank you all. Really appreciate it. And I'm getting one more word. And follow us on social media. Yes. On Twitter. I think we're on everything except Facebook.
We'll add your handle and all social in the show notes, but also in on our Twitter and all of that to link everybody to you all.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks for hosting us here in City Hall, man. This is great.
Thank you for hosting me on the podcast. I really appreciate it, guys.